everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on leveling up your public record search. My name is Alicia Morris. I work in the Public Information Education Office, and I'm the host of today's webinar. Before we start, I'd like to share just a few logistical announcements with you. During today's webinar, you will be able to submit questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will answer these questions after the presentation is complete. However, we may not be able to answer all of the questions submitted. So please note that if you choose to participate and your questions addressed in the webinar, it will be included in the recording as part of this webinar. And now I would like to welcome our first presenter of the day, Denise Wofford, Assistant Registered and Director of the Office of Copyright Records. Denise?
Thank you. Hello and welcome. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. And thanks for setting aside time to join our webinar, demonstrating the new copyright public record system. Our goal is to help you become familiar with the new system so you can begin using it to search the office's public records. Presenting with me today are George Thuronyi, Deputy Director in the Office of Public Information and Education, and Michael Goldfein, a copyright specialist in the Records Research and Certification Division of the Copyright Office. We also have Sean Gallagher joining us today. Sean is the Copyright Public Record System product owner. His official title is Management Program Analyst, and he also works in the Office of Copyright Records. Since Sean is a subject matter expert, Sean will support our Q&A segment at the end of the webinar. As you can see from the timeline on this slide, making copyright records publicly available for searching copyright ownership has been a long journey. Since 1870, when the Copyright Office was consolidated under the Library of Congress, the office has provided access to records on copyright ownership. Before the advent and widespread use of computers, records were kept in a hard copy index card catalog. The office used these records, as well as bound record books, to record copyright ownership information. In 1978, the office replaced the use of hard copy records with the first ever electronic system for indexing copyright ownership information. That system was called the Copyright Office Publication and Interactive Cataloging System, or COPIX. COPIX began as a pilot in 1972 and went into full production in 1978. Since COPIX was before major technology systems at the Library of Congress were available over the World Wide Web, the public could only access it on-site in the U.S. Copyright Office's reading room. COPIX remained in operation until 2007, when it was replaced with the system we are now using, that we internally call Voyager, but you know it as the official public catalog. The public catalog was definitely an improvement over COPIX when it went live. It was the first copyright system available on the web. It provided additional search options like keyword, filters, and limits, and it had full display labels to identify different parts of the copyright record. However, over the years, as search capabilities became more sophisticated, areas for improvement were sorely needed. For example, the current public catalog's interface has become outdated. It has strict formatting requirements to get the correct results. It also has results limits to no more than 10,000 records. Plus, the way it formats information is not copyright specific. The public catalog is based on the MARC format, or the Library of Congress cataloging system. And while the cataloging system is a great structure for displaying library reference information, it is not the best fit for displaying copyright information. One of the biggest gaps we've been hearing from the public is that the online catalog contains only a portion of the copyright records. For example, it's missing the older records prior to 1978. And that still requires the public to come on site to the U.S. Copyright Office in Washington, D.C. to gain access to those records and other records that are not included in the public catalog. Next slide. Currently, we are working to transform and modernize the office's business processes. To accomplish this, the Copyright Office has taken a holistic assessment of how to improve the public's online experience. One improvement is providing better and more comprehensive access to copyright ownership information. As a component of our modernization effort, we are truly excited to introduce you to the new Copyright Public Record System pilot. It was first released as an open pilot in December of 2020, and the current plan is to move it into full production in 2025. At that point, it will become the sole source of authoritative online copyright information on registrations and recordations submitted to the U.S. Copyright Office, replacing the current official public catalog. The slide you see on the screen has a list of some of the new system's features, several of which you will see demonstrated in today's webinar. In addition to a modern interface, I would like to point out that it has flexible formatting, advanced and simple search capability, dynamic filters, the ability to email and save records. It also has been designed to specifically display copyright information, and it provides more comprehensive sets of copyright records. We in the Copyright Office are delighted to share more information about the new system, and I encourage you to experiment with it. So let me turn the webinar over to George, who will go over features in a new system and how you can begin to use it. George?
Thank you, Denise. So let's get right into it. What will you find in the Copyright Public Record System? The system contains tens of millions of records, and more are being added continuously. The system has information relating to copyright registrations and also records related to copyright ownership and transfers. Those are legal documents, and we refer to those as recordation when they're submitted to the office. There are lots of reasons you might be interested in searching for copyright records. You might be tracing ownership so that you can license someone else's work. You might be involved in litigation, or perhaps you're looking up a copyright ownership for a work by a relative or a friend, or even yourself. Today, we'll look at some of the very basic features of the system. And the system is available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's completely free. You don't need to sign up for anything. You don't need an account. You can just use it whenever you like. So play around, have fun, and discover things. When researching information about copyright registration and ownership, it's very helpful to know about the duration of the copyright term. And generally speaking, copyright lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years thereafter. For anonymous works or pseudonymous works, those are pen names, or a work made for hire, the term is 95 years from publication or 125 years from the year of its creation, whichever expires first. I know that's a lot. You don't need to memorize this. For works prior to 1978 and for more information about what I just described here, please consult our Information Circular 15A called Duration of Copyright, and you can also watch a great video on our YouTube channel. So where do we start? You saw a URL earlier in the chat, but also if you forget that, just go to copyright.gov. Copyright.gov is our website that contains a wealth of information about all things copyright. You'll learn about copyright law and procedures. There are also lots of helpful videos on many different copyright topics. For the Copyright Public Records System, scroll down the page until you see Search Copyright Records. Then select Learn More. Then select Copyright Public Record System Pilot. You'll see a short disclaimer, and then we're ready to start. Today, we're going to demonstrate several different searches that show the capabilities of the system. For our first search, let's look for a copyright registration for a recent poem written by Ada Limon, who is the nation's poet laureate. In this example, we remember the author's name, but we don't quite remember the name of the poem. We do know, though, that it was written fairly recently. So you'll see there's a very simple search box with some options. And we're going to start by typing in the name Ada Limon in the search box. And we'll see some options on the left. We're going to select name, because that's her name. She's the name of the author or claimant. And our next screen, once we select search, will show our search results. You'll see a lot of different options here, but for this example, we're going to focus on the sort by option because we remember that this is a recent poem. So we're going to sort by the date, newest first. And then once the search is rearranged, you'll see that they're now in reverse chronological order. Let's select that first one. It's called In Praise of Mystery, a poem for Europa. Oh yes, that's what I'm looking for. That sparks my memory. That's a poem she wrote to honor one of Jupiter's moons. There's a lot of information here, including rights and permissions, in case we want to contact the claimant to license her work. So that's a good example of using the system. In our next example, we're going to look for works by Vanessa Lee, who's appearing at the library's 2024 National Book Festival. As we did in our previous example, we'll start with her name. I'll type in Vanessa Lee, it's L-E, and then again, select name because that's her name, and then search. You'll notice a lot of different results here, and if you look closely, you'll see that that third result is from someone with a slightly different name. Let's select that one and see why that came up as a search result. You'll see here that the author has Lee in their name, and also the word Vanessa is in the address. So that's why that came up when we searched for Vanessa Lee. Keep in mind that the system contains millions of records, so you might get some results that you don't quite expect, but I'm going to show you how you can narrow those results to get what you're looking for. So let's go back to the top of the screen and we're going to select Advanced Search. That's going to be our new best friend. You'll see a lot of different options here, and we're just going to focus on a few things. First, we will look under field headings, and you'll see a lot of options. We're going to select all names because we're looking for a name. And as search type, we're going to look for starts with. Then we're going to, again, type in Vanessa Lee and see what happens. So in this case, we see, let's see what happens, 120 results. Okay, why is that? Well, there are lots of variations here of Vanessa Lee starting the name. And this is actually a powerful tool because if you don't know the exact spelling of a name, you can use this to narrow it down. So we're going to narrow this down some more. We'll go back to our best friend, the advanced search settings. And instead of using the starts with, we're going to select is exact. So that means we're looking for exactly that spelling of the name. So let's see what happens when we change that. Okay, we see from 120, it goes to 2. There are 2 results, and that's exactly what we're looking for. We select this first one, and we see a recent book called Daughter, and that's a text, TX means text, and U means unpublished. And then because there are only 2 results here, we can click Next and see the next option. And we see something called The Last Blood Carver, which was written quite recently this year. So my recommendation to you is if you don't find what you're looking for at first, keep looking around. You're not going to break it. We encourage you to explore and discover. In the next example, we're going to try a search for a classic older work. In this case, we know both the title and the author. We're going to search for To Kill a Mockingbird. And again, we'll type that in our search box. And instead of name, we're going to select title and see what happens. Wow, 50,000 results. That's a lot. So let's take a look and see why we got so many results. Well, you'll notice that To Kill a Mockingbird ends up in a lot of results. Because it was such a renowned work, there are a lot of books and other creative works that have To Kill a Mockingbird in the title. And this is also a reminder that titles by themselves are not protected by copyright. So in search results, you might end up with identical or similar titles in your results. So let's go back up to our friend, the advanced search, and we will limit our results a little bit more to get it down from 50,000. And we're going to do this by, again, we're going to select title, and we'll type in To Kill a Mockingbird. And then we're going to add a new row so that we're selecting by 2 items. So To Kill a Mockingbird, or in this case, and we're going to use names. So To Kill a Mockingbird and Harper Lee who is the author of To Kill a Mockingbird. And we'll see what our results are. So a lot less than 50,000. In fact, they're 20. Let's sort them by oldest first, because we know this is an older work. And we look at the first one, and we see that it is an renewal, an RE, but it says so on the label, renewal. And it's a renewal for the original 1960 work. So that's really interesting. That's exactly what we're looking for. Let's go back to our search results and look up a couple of other things. We'll see in our results that there are also documents included here, those recorded documents of ownership that I mentioned earlier. Let's select one of these. Here's one. A document, and it says that it's a termination of rights. So that's really interesting too. And so we found some useful records, and we want to save them for later. So let's go back to our results and make sure that all of them are displaying. First of all, we see 1 of 10 of 20 results are showing here. And when we go down to the bottom of the screen, we'll see a feature indicating how many rows are displayed at once. So instead of 10 rows, let's display 25. And that'll include all the results of this here. And so we're going to select, with this box on the left, select all of them. We could select one by one if we wanted to as well. But in this case, I'm going to select all of the works with this box on the left. And then under Actions, you'll see some things we can do. Download. We can download by PDF, text, or CSV file, and we'll get that in that format. Or we can email the results to ourselves or to a friend and save that research for later. So that's a really handy tool to be able to do that. For our next search, we're going to try a different approach. In the previous examples, we started with a simple search, and then we used some of the advanced features to narrow it down. In this example, we're going to start with the advanced search and then limit as we go. So over here on the right, we select advanced search, and we're going to look for some records associated with the movie Despicable Me. I don't remember whether this is number 3 or number 4, so I'll just type in Despicable Me as the title. Up at the top here, we see a selection where we can select just registration. We're putting in title for Despicable Me and registration. And then as we scroll down, there are a lot of options. So let's pick some that would be relevant. Published, we know it's a published because it's a movie. We know it's a work of performing arts. Movies fall into that category. And we know it's a motion picture. So you see that down at the bottom. We also know that the movie came out quite recently, so we're going to limit our results with the date feature here. We'll limit them between January 1st, 2024 and July 1st, 2024. So that'll give us the most recent results. And let's see what happens when we do this kind of a search. You'll see, here are the limits that we used on the left. And you'll see there's one result. That's exactly what I'm looking for. That's great. Despicable Me. That's the movie. I want to, here's the information I need for this. And again, you have that Actions button, and you can email or download them, save the record for yourself later. One thing we've encountered before is variations in names. So our copyright records reflect the names that are given to us. Here we're searching for an author whose name is Edith Nesbit. We know this author by that name, and we see some results here under that heading. There are 3, but we also happen to know that this author went by E. Nesbit as well. So we're going to add that. So we're going to go with Edith Nesbit or under names E. Nesbit. So this will give us both variations of that name. This can be a very handy tool. We'll search for this, and we'll see there are 23 results from Edith Nesbit and E. Nesbit. And I bring this up because this happens quite often. There are many reasons why people might change their names, either for personal reasons or professional ones, and our system includes the name as it is submitted to us. So people use all kinds of pen names and nicknames. There are variations of names. There could be a Robert who later is Bob or later is Rob. Elizabeth might be Liz, might be Beth. And when you're looking at our system, sometimes you have to be a detective and you have to look for variations of names so that you can get the results that you're looking for. There's another useful feature I'd like to point out. On the top right of the screen, you'll see an option for recent searches. And if you select that, you'll see a list of the searches, and you can select each one by one with a little box on the left, or you can redo the search by clicking on the search term, or you can save them all with that actions button again and download them and email them as I demonstrated earlier. So we have a lot of options here in case you want to go back and revisit your work. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see an option that says feedback. Now, we've mentioned that this system is a pilot. We are very interested in your feedback, and we're constantly improving the system, adding features, fixing bugs, and making the features easier and better for you to use. If you do select feedback, you'll see that there are some options here. You can give us comments about your experience with the search. What did you find useful? Did you have any problems using it? We'd really like to know so we can improve the system for you. So with that, I now pass it on to Michael.
Thank you, George. My name is Michael Goldfein. I work in the Records Research and Certification Division, or RRC for short. And I'm going to give a brief overview of the resources and services RRC provides. The card catalog, which was mentioned earlier, contains about 45 million cards and covers records from 1870 through 1977. And some of these cards are the actual applications that were submitted for copyright protection. The record books, which cover the same time period as the card catalog, contain bound applications and other records as well. Microfilm, about 23,000 of them apparently, include applications from 1978 through 1994, as well as historical records collected by district courts from 1790 through 1870. The copyright recorded assignment and documents from 1870 through 1994 contain the actual documents that are referenced in the card catalog and CPRS. The Copyright Imaging System, or CIS, contain images of registrations and recorded documents from around 1994 on. Though the last two are online, they are only available on site, and all of these resources are available in the Copyright Reading Room, LM463. So come by and visit us. We're open 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday, except for holidays, and we'd be happy to assist you. I'd like to quickly mention a couple online resources that are not CPRS. The VCC, or Virtual Card Catalog, that's just the digitized version of the card catalog. The CCEs, or Catalog of Copyright Entries, those contain basic information of registration, and they were published from 1890 through 1978, and they are searchable, which is very convenient. The record books, these include bound applications for works from around 1945 to 1977. These resources, as well as some others, are available offsite anywhere. We're always working on incorporating these records into CPRS, but due to the incredible volume of records, it's being done in phases. And last I checked, we're at just under 3 million VCC cards that are available on CPRS, including application cards from 1909 to 1945. RRC also provides fee-based services, one of which is searches. Given basic information, year, title, name, type of work, we search our records, including all of the resources mentioned above. We then write a report with our findings. You may request an estimate for a search by filling out the search estimate form, which we're dropping into the chat. Another fee-based service we provide is copies of records. These records include applications, correspondence, recorded documents, and deposits. The price of the copies themselves is $12 per registration number per document, except for additional certificates, which are $55. Some of the records, deposits, correspondence, and I think some applications require fees for retrieval services. These fees vary based on format. Any record can also be certified, which involves attaching it to a blue backing with a ribbon and seal. It costs $200 per record and is mostly used when submitting the record to court. You may request copies of records by filling out the copy estimate form, which we will also be placing into the chat. The full list of fees for our services may be found in Circular 4 and on our website, copyright.gov/RRC. With that, I think we are ready to move on to the Q&A portion of the webinar. I will pass it over to my colleague Anjana in the Office of Public Information and Education, who will be helping us moderate the Q&A.
Great, thank you so much, Michael. Before we get to our Q&A, we're sharing some contact information on the screen in case you need additional information or support. We will now begin the Q&A portion of the program. As a reminder, you can submit relevant questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We may not be able to answer all the questions that are submitted today. I'll start with the first question. This is a good one for Michael. Can I see the deposit material for our registration?
Okay, camera back on. For those of you who may not know, deposit is the term used for the work submitted for copyright protection. So the book, music, artwork, etc. Deposits are generally not made available to the public. However, if you are the claimant and if the deposit is in our collection, you may request a copy. There are extensions to this. If there's pending litigation, you may fill out a litigation statement, which is subject to approval. We also offer inspections where someone who would otherwise not be eligible to obtain a copy may come to the reading room and inspect the deposit. For any of these services, you would need to fill out the copy estimate form, which we pasted earlier in the chat.
Great, thanks so much. Here's another question. This might be a good one for you, Sean. How does the system work with other online services where one can see copyright ownership in the age of streaming, internet, smartphones, technology, and Gen AI?
Yeah, thanks, Anjana. Happy to field that question. So right now, the copyright system is not connected to any external databases at the moment. It's really comprised of the records that we're creating here in the Copyright Office related to registration applications and the transfers of copyright ownership that George mentioned, alluding to. We call them recorded documents or recordations of copyright ownership. As far as the age of streaming and mobile, yeah, the Copyright Public Record System is it's online. It's available just as we are in the Zoom meeting. I think we put that link up at the top, and it should be responsive to any device you choose to access it, whether it's a mobile device in your hand, a tablet, laptop, computer at home, however you're trying to access it. It works really well with most modern browsers. Some of the older ones that aren't supported by their original companies are not supported. But yeah, it should be available on any device that you care to access it at publicrecords.copyright.gov.
Great, thanks, Sean. Michael, I have another question for you. If there is a current copyright dispute over a work, will the parties involved in the dispute be listed, or how will disputed copyrights be noted in the CPRS record?
Sorry. Yeah, so let me see. CPR. So if there is a court document that is filed with the Copyright Office, it would the record of it would appear in CPRS, but the actual document itself would not. But you can always you can request a copy of those documents by filling out the copy estimate form that we pasted earlier.
Great, thanks. And this next question is, can I rely on the information in the CPRS pilot as being accurate before the official go live next summer? There were actually a few questions related to when the pilot system would become the sole authoritative source. Denise, would you be able to answer that one?
Sure, not a problem. So I know you're all excited to use the new system. I'm excited as well. However, in terms of using it as the Copyright Office's authoritative source for records, the pilot system does not replace or supersede the current official online public catalog or any current search practices that we have in the U.S. Copyright Office until it goes into full production next year. The good news is that CPRS is a fully live system that you can use now to see how it works. It provides real-time data just like the online catalog, and it's updated daily within 24 hours of the online catalog. So just go ahead and test it out. I would also like to add that CPRS will release more features and updates before the final production version is released next year. So your feedback is really, really important in determining which additional features are going to be prioritized.
Thanks so much, Denise. The next question is, will the copyright application records be available digitally on the new search portal? This person is saying, I was able to download them from the online record a few months ago, but currently cannot see them for the same works on the new portal. Sean?
Yeah, Anjan, I'll be happy to take that. We're looking at making more copyright-related documents available through CPRS, those that statutorily we are supposed to be making available for public inspection. We did hit a slight technical issue with the way that some of those documents were displaying. It's something we're actively working on, and we're hoping to reinstate that functionality in the future with a couple other features that Denise alluded to before we become the official authoritative source of copyright information.
Great, thanks, Sean. This person is asking about estate planning and would love to know what documents or processes are necessary to execute the ownership transfer. Michael, would you be able to answer that one?
Sure, yeah. So you would want to contact the Public Information Office for that information. They would have the information on what documents would need to be filled out. The number for the general number for Copyright Office is 1-877-476-0778, and that's also available on copyright.gov. But you could also send them an email at copyinfo@copyright.gov.
Great, thanks, Michael. Another question, this might be a good one for you, George. How do you handle accent marks? What about articles from foreign languages?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And in our previous example that I showed you with Ada Limon actually has an accent mark over the letter O, but you'll notice, if you remember, that I didn't type that in, and the system is smart enough to figure that out. So, but try out different variations. If you really want to be sure, you can put that in there, and it will. You can put in LE for L and other sorts of DIE for D in German, and other sorts of diacritics and articles in different languages as well. So I encourage you to, if you don't find what you're looking for, try a different way, different variation. It's always good to try out different things.
Great, thank you. George, I'm going to stick with you with another question. So are foreign works like E. Nesbit's included in the database?
Yeah, so the answer to that is it depends. Anyone in the world is eligible to register a copyright with the U.S. Copyright Office. So people from other countries do register their works with us in the U.S. And when they are registered, then they end up in the catalog. So if somebody registers a work in a different country but doesn't register it in the United States, then it will not be in our catalog. So it really depends on whether they register with us as well.
Great, thank you. Denise, this is one for you. Are there plans to include the older copyright records in CPRS currently only available on site in your Washington, D.C. location?
Yes, as we mentioned briefly earlier, the CPRS is going to have more comprehensive records. So there's currently a multi-year effort underway to digitize our older paper and microfilm records, and also create the associated metadata to make them searchable in the new system. We are actually prioritizing making these records based on their type and category, such as whether they're still under copyright, is it an application record, a renewal, an assignment, or if they contain index or supplemental record information. So records are being added in phases as we complete the steps necessary to make them searchable in CPRS. Some good news to know is that currently we have already started the process of incorporating the card catalog records, the application records in there. And right now we have over 2.9 million records available in CPRS, and we're adding more each and every week. So CPRS will also include other records, certificates of registration, recorded transfers of ownership documents, as well as other records that we have online in different platforms like the record books. We're going to make those searchable at the record level as well. So the intent and overarching goal is to have a comprehensive copyright public record information all in one place, and that's going to be CPRS.
Great, thanks for that, Denise. Sean, I have another question for you. When using the advanced search to search for an owner, if the company name is ABC Company, Inc., and you select the search type filter is exact, do you have to include the Inc.?
Yeah, Jenna, happy to take that one. So the advanced search has a number of fields that you can search, right? Like keyword, title, name, party, claimant, things that are related more directly to copyright than you may find in an ILS. And then there's 3 different search categories that we have. And the best way to think about those 3 categories is they work from the most broad down to the most narrow. So the default selection is going to be as a phrase, right? So if you enter the name of the company in there, it'll look for those characters in that order somewhere in one of the fields. It can be in a much larger field. So if you looked for your company ABC, if you just search for ABC, you would get ABC, you'd get ABC Inc., you'd get, the alphabet starts with ABC. The second search term that you can specify is starts with. So that's also known as a left match or a left anchored search, where you only get results that have your search term, but then the trailing part can be anything. So if you're searching for something that may have a plural and you just use the singular, you may get something with an S after it, or if it's the beginning of a longer phrase, if you just search for the first few words, the left match will just look for that beginning part, whatever you enter. The is exact search, that's the most stringent. That's going to get you the least amount of results, the most strict of all of ours. If you know the search term you're looking for, and you know that's exactly what it is, and you know exactly which field it's in, feel free to use that one. It's going to get you a very limited amount of results. So if you know exactly what you're looking for and have a pretty good idea of where it is, that's a great search to use. Otherwise, like George noted, start broad and then begin to narrow it down using maybe the ands, the ors, the booleans that we offer, or the date filters or the record type filters that we also provide after that initial search.
Great, thanks, Sean. I also see a question. Is there a list of commonly used terms the Copyright Office uses and their definitions? I'm actually going to put a link in the chat that is a resource that hopefully should help you get some answers there. The next question is for you, George. We're going to go back to the Ada Limon example that you shared. How can you tell the difference between a record for a single poem and a book/collection? Is it common for smaller works like poems to be listed individually rather than as part of a collection?
Sure. Well, if somebody submits a single poem for registration, then that's going to be listed that way. There are also some options for collective works. So it really depends on how the work was submitted. Oftentimes with poetry, it's an anthology where poems are put together in one book, and you'll find the poem listed under that title. So it really depends on how it was submitted. But so you can look either under the title, or if you happen to know the anthology name, search that way.
Great, thanks, George. I see a question here about whether the recording of the webinar will be posted on our website and when. Yes, certainly a recording of today's webinar will be posted, as well as a PDF of the slides. We will be posting it on the event page. That will go up as soon as it's ready. I can't give you an exact date when that'll happen, but it'll be soon. And I'm just dropping in the chat the link when you should see it up. And we will also be, of course, sharing on our social media channels when that recording is live. The next question is a good one for you, Michael. Just give me a second. Sometimes the copyright record notes that there is correspondence associated with an application or registration. Is that correspondence available online?
It is not available online, but if it's still in our collection, there's we only keep them for, I believe, 30 years. But if it's still in our collection, you may request a copy of them, which would also be in the copy estimate form. It would be one of the boxes to check.
Great, thanks. This might be a good question for you, Sean or George or Michael. How does the new system do with searching newspaper titles?
I can begin to take that one, although I will make the caveat that a lot of what we can search for in the copyright public record system is dependent on the information that was collected when the application for registration was made. So if you are looking for newspaper titles, just thinking of an example, referencing some of the 2.9 million card catalog records that we have. If you search for Boston Globe, you're going to find a fair amount of records in there. Again, it all kind of depends on how the records were registered with the office, whether they were registered as part of a serial publication. And I don't want to speak too much to that. So, George or Michael, if you want to jump in and add a little bit more clarification about that. But I will say, as long as the newspaper name that you're looking for is indicated somewhere in a field that we identify as a title, then it'll be searchable and you should be able to find it.
Great, thank you. This one's for Michael. Any technological potential for deposit inspections to be done digitally outside of visiting DC via the portal in a secure way in the future? Oh, Michael, you might be on mute.
I am muted, yes. So the technological problem is not really the issue. It's more if that's allowed by our procedures. As far as I know, that is not on the horizon. Inspections would need to be done on site and with a copyright employee present.
Yes, and I can add on to that, Michael. We do get a lot of requests to have access to digital images of the deposit copies. At this time, the office has been getting feedback on that. We are working with the Office of General Counsel to figure out if that's the approach that the office wants to work. So it's definitely something that we're thinking about, but at this time it's not available. And so once we are able to release something like that, we certainly will let you know.
Denise, I'm going to stick with you and ask you just an unrelated follow-up question that we've received. How long is the backlog for recordation?
Well, actually, there are two things here, and this gives me an opportunity to put a plug in for our new online recordation system. The new recordation system processes recorded documents for 205 documents within weeks versus the paper submission process, which takes many, many months. So at this time, the things that are coming into the office through that system are being processed almost immediately. As far as the paper recordations that are coming into the office, that information is available over on the copyright website on the recordation page. I believe currently right now we're processing 205 documents from March of 2022. And then for our notices of termination, we're processing paper notices of terminations from October of 2023.
Great, thanks, Denise. This next question is, does the author have to register their literary or research paper to the office? Is it possible for the author to use their research paper without registering with the Copyright Office? which is after registered in the Copyright Office or created in real. I think this person is just asking if they need to register with the office. George, I think you've seen this question as well. Would you be able to help answer it?
Sure. In the United States, registration for copyright is optional. There are benefits to registering the copyright. And in fact, we're going to put in the chat a link to information circular number 1, which describes some of the benefits of registration. But it is optional. So if someone does not register their work with us, then you won't be able to find that work listed in our system. So one of the benefits of registering is creating this authoritative record. So it does end up in our system so people can find it. So that's actually one of the benefits of registering.
Got it. And this next question is for Sean. Will the new system have the capability to download records in bulk using APIs or other bulk record download tools?
So we do have an API that our search is built on, and there is a public endpoint for that if people are curious. I'll put that in the chat. So you can access that if you like. We are thinking about having a more machine-friendly interface. Right now, we wanted to focus on making sure that humans could search for registrations and recorded documents through the Copyright Public Record System, but we do realize there are a lot of people out there that would love to do something interesting with our information. So we do have that existing API right now that we have in the chat, and we are looking forward to other ways that we can make copyright information available for those of you that want to do something interesting with a machine with it as well.
Great. And I think this question was sort of answered by the speakers within the different answers, but it's a good one to just have answered again. So really, what is the difference between the old and new system? Sean, would you take that one as well?
Yeah, sure. So one of the largest differences is that the copyright catalog, which is currently available and has been for quite a while, that contains records from 1978 to the present. The public record system does as well, but in addition, we have those 2.9 million registration application cards, and that number does go up almost every Thursday as we begin ingesting new cards. So that's one of the big features, is you get access to more copyright indexing information from that 1909 to 1945 period. So in addition to that, all of the detailed record views, right? So all of the labels and everything should be there. Those should all be the exact same information. But you also get some more robust date filters where you can specify the type of date you want to filter by. So if you want to filter by a date of registration, if you want to filter by a publication date, you're able to do that really quickly and easily. And in addition, we also provide this really nice set of facets and filters over on the right-hand sidebar, where you can narrow your search based on registration classes, based on the work types, based on the type of recorded document, if you like. So we're really providing a way to allow you to focus your search a lot more depending on what information you have. We also have hyperlinked almost all of the copyright numbers within the system. So if you have a registration renewal, or if there is another record associated with it that was mentioned in the copyright application, you'll see it as a blue hyperlink, and you'll be able to click on that to do a search for that registration or recorded document number and find that associated information. We've also taken the name directory that exists in the public catalog, and we've brought it out into its own special feature that you can access from the homepage. And through that name directory, you can search for all of the names that have been indexed in the copyright system so far in the records that are included. So that means any of the names that have been indexed in our registrations after 1978, as well as recorded documents. So there's a couple of new features. It's also pretty snappy and pretty quick. And we like to think that it's a little bit easier to read through and understand.
Thanks, Sean. I have two questions that I'm going to direct to Michael. The first question, What is the best practice for using CPRS to determine that a copyright was not timely renewed?
So that would probably be like a balance, or you would use the circular for duration of copyright to determine what the renewal year would be for that when it was first registered, and then going to either the card catalog, virtual card catalog, or physical card catalog if you want, and CPRS to determine if it was registered in the first place and then renewed at the appropriate year, usually 28 years after.
Great, thanks. The second question, if someone wanted to search for a particular comic strip done by Gary Larson that the searcher remembers involved a dinosaur, does CPRS enable people to search the records by using a specific descriptive element of a copyrighted work?
So the catalog, as was mentioned before, contains the information that was provided on the application. So if it happened to be included in the application, it would be searchable. That kind of stuff usually is not, and we usually have trouble with that kind of search. But since Gary Larson was a big name, he may have registered his work separately. So you may be able to search that way.
Great, thank you. George, this is a question for you. I don't understand the different registration classes. Where can I go get assistance? And I think there's a resource I can share around this too.
There is, and you'll find it at the bottom of the help screen in the system. We'll put the link in the chat, and that describes all the administrative classes of copyrighted works. There are only a few that are current: TX for text, SR for sound recording, VA for visual art, PA for performing arts. Prior to 1978, there were a lot more of them if you're looking for an older work. So go to that resource, and it's all spelled out there so you don't have to remember what I just told you.
Thanks, George. Sean, this may be a question for you. Is there a plan to have a functionality enhancement that allows users to flag registration records that contain any errors, typos that should be reviewed by office staff?
Yeah, we may lean on some of our user experience designers to figure out if we want to do that just as a button on every detailed record page. But I will say that right now, you can share links directly to records. There's a little share button in the upper right-hand corner of each detailed record view. So if you see something amiss, you can always click that share link, or you can just copy the URL in your browser, send that information along to copy info with some of the reasons about why you think that may be inappropriate or inaccurate. And the folks at Copy Info will make sure that it gets to the public records team, and we can always have a look or see if that's something that should be involved in one of our other processes that deal with making sure that we're producing the most accurate public record.
Great, thanks, Sean. Another one for you. Why aren't all of my copyright registrations listed together?
So this, I think, gets to the names that we talked about. So we talked about the name directory earlier. And just to provide a little bit more context, when you submit an application for registration, or when you are a party to a document that's being recorded as a transfer of copyright ownership, when those documents are received by the office as they're being processed, we index those names. And so the way that you submit your name on that application or on that request for recordation is going to determine how it's going to show up in our name directory, or that index of all the copyright names. So if your first registration, you went with Joe, the second one you went with Joseph, the third one you went with Johnny, those are going to show up as 3 different registrations, or at least 3 different names, and that those are distinct. So if you want to make sure that all of your copyright documents are included in the same way, you need to make sure that you're really consistent with how you're submitting your name on those applications that are sent into the office. That name directory does help you search for it, though. So if you do want to search for your name, or if you want to use one of the links at the bottom of any of the records you see in CPRS, that'll take you to the name directory. And then from the name directory, you can click into, if you click on that specific name, it'll actually bring you to an alphabetical view where you can see if, maybe there's, I think if you look under Smith Jane, right, there's a ton of people that have just a single initial that differs. And so using that name directory, you can kind of scroll through page by page because there may be a slightly different spelling of a name that you're looking for, a couple entries above or a couple entries below where you find that specific name in the name directory.
Great, thank you. Just time for a couple more questions. The next one for you, George. How can we find if a copyright has a security interest?
Yeah, great question. So copyright is a form of intellectual property and has a value. And sometimes that property is used in collaterals and loans and other kinds of financial transactions. The documents, the legal documents of those transactions are often submitted to us as part of the recordation process, which we mentioned earlier. And in a search, you can specify to look for documents, recordation, rather than registration. And when you select recordation, you'll see all of the documents that are applicable to a particular work. And that's where you can trace that kind of ownership transfer that happens from time to time.
Thanks, George. Next question. Do you plan to include renewal information at some point? Michael, can you take that one?
Sure. Yeah, so renewal information is available in CPRS. The registration number would just start with RE, but any work that was renewed from 1978 on would show up in the records.
Great, thank you. And second question, can we see the underlying documents for recorded documents?
Me again. No, they are not available on site or online. They are available in the on site resource that I mentioned earlier, or you can also request a copy of it from the copy estimate form again.
Yes, and just to add on to what Michael says, as he says, those documents are currently available online by coming into the U.S. Copyright Office. We do have a future project that's actually underway to make those documents available online in the CPRS system. We're going through the process of getting those linked up and everything that needs to be done to make sure that they're securely viewable online.
Thanks, Denise. And I think that we'll conclude our Q&A portion of the webinar. I'm just going to plug again a survey that you can take to provide your feedback on CPRS. I'm going to put that in the chat. I believe it was shared earlier. In addition to that, when you sign out of today's session, we encourage you to please take part in another brief survey regarding your experience today. We'll definitely use this to improve your webinar program. And I saw another question in the chat we weren't quite able to get to around considering other topics for webinars, and we will certainly take that into consideration. As I mentioned before, we will be posting a PDF copy of the slides and the video on the event homepage, so please keep an eye out for that. And with that, thank you for your attention today, and please join us for the next webinar.